Thank you everyone for having us here today. I'm with the ITripleE Learning Technology Standards Committee. I'm also with the Advanced Distributed Learning Initiative. It's a government research activity looking at learning technology. I'm also here with Tyde Richards. He's the chair of the ITripleE LTC, and Andy Johnson's also with ADL. We're talking about storage APIs, possibly for annotations, and we've been looking at evaluating the Experience API for annotation storage. Just a little bit of background and history about the Experience API. Originally started as a R&D project a few years ago under the Department of Defense. You may have heard of Tin Can API. That's the name that it was started off as a project code name. The formal name is the Experience API though. And I was kind of happy to hear a couple of people mention activity streams earlier, because that's what this work has really been based upon. As some of you may or may not know, Activity Stream is a kind of a collaborative effort between Google, Facebook, and others looking at storing social interactions. A lot of the interactions you see on Facebook and other social networks are using this triple approach, where you have maybe an actor, a verb, an object, storing things in the form of a statement. So this is a basic example here where you have I as an actor, watched is the verb, and the activity could be a video, it could be any other type of activity, it could be interaction in ebook. But you can also have complex statements adding more context to that triple. In this one we have, as an example, the training course. So a little more background is developed by an open source community. This wasn't thought up by ADL or a DARPA-like activity. We actually engaged the whole global community to provide input into this. And it was based on originally a learning, education, and training technology need. Years ago we created a standard called SCORM that helped track courses in a standardized manner in learning management systems, as Philip, I believe, brought up earlier. And now we need to track more other types of learning experiences, not just courses. We have a lot of informal learning happening and real world happening, not just in the cognitive domain, but also in the psychomotor domain. A lot of opportunities to connect with sensors and other things. But in the education and training world, we're really especially interested in simulators, virtual worlds, intelligent tutoring systems, and also not just self-paced learning scenarios, but also group-based learning scenarios. And this API is what affords it this capability, but most importantly, it's also both machine and human readable. Uses natural language. Another component in this project or Experience API is a learning record store. And basically it's just a data store, also referred to as a triple store, but it really opens up opportunity for more deeper integration with other web services and analytics. So not going to get into too much. This isn't about XAPI so much as just introducing it as a possible integration point with open annotations, and talking a little bit more about our project at ITripleE and what we've done so far in prototyping with some other solutions. So here's a few links if you'd like to learn more about XAPI and documentation. We also have a JavaScript wrapper available, as well as an open source learning record store. I want to mention also it's already taking pretty good adoption in terms of vendors implementing it. There's a number of commercial and open source solutions available, and we're starting to see it being integrated into e-learning authoring tools as well. So a little more about the ITripleE project that Tyde has started here. He actually requested activity a few years ago. He wanted to explore the possibility of using EPUB 3 as a sustainable format for accessing mobile content, but also looking at tracking the type of interactions that happen within an EPUB or ebook experience, including annotations and other types of activities. So the project was actually approved December 2012. 2013 was a feasibility study looking at the probability of some of the things that were going on. That was really reaffirmed as there's the IDPF established an EduPub effort specifically looking at this, and it was really in alignment with a lot of Tyde's vision. So this year and next year we're going to be looking at prototypes and implementation. Also related to Experience API, the ITripleE is taking over standardization of that specification, or looking to make it a standard. So go on and talk about a couple of demos. So We've done EPUB 3 and XAPI integration inside of iBooks, Readium, EPUB.js, Caliber. We're also looking at doing some widgets embedded within the content as actual learning activities. Also looking at the client reader layer to do the API implementation. We're interested in things too, like synchronizing the bookmarks across platforms and different readers using XAPI because it allows for this open interchange of format. Also have been looking at using Annotator and EPUB testing and more readers. We've already tested in a few. Also want to look at a potential mapping exercise at the serialization of the JSON data through open annotation. So here's a few screen captures. Didn't think we'd have time for a demo. Just want to show you this is a like 3 or 4 page EPUB demo that we created. That first one I believe was in EPUB.js. This one is in iBooks. Within this demo, which you can download, it actually has the statements in JavaScript that you can could reuse, and then as well as a login here to the AL Learning Records Store. This is a demo of Annotator and EPUB 3 and XAPI. And here it's kind of cut off at the bottom, but you can actually see the annotations taking place inside of the, I believe, Readium. Yeah, here's the Readium with the Annotator integrated. So we know all these things can take place. We want to look at it a little bit more deeper. Here's another screen capture of actually embedded HTML5 video inside of an EPUB 3. So we think like annotations being embedded also within this experience, or at least giving the user the opportunity to have annotations not have to go out to YouTube would be a valuable experience. A little bit of code. So it's basically a JavaScript statement. You have the triple being stored right here. As you can see, the verb being passed through is experience. This is just a very basic example. This is the learning record store view, which actually shows what would be stored on the data, the server side. Shows some of the data model elements. Come at time? Okay. And so open annotation, JSON LD. We see there's context, there's a lot of elements here that we think are in common with the XAPI statement property. So we haven't done any work in this yet, but we'd love to open up the discussion and see if there's opportunity to collaborate. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Kareem, add AK2 WebB3 at all most places. I think this would be a natural for people doing collaborative research, collaborative writing, and even commenting on not just sites, live sites, but on research. EPUB then has a very EPUB and annotations then have a very, very valuable space, kind of like what you're using with Google Docs now, to be able to show where people's consensus on something's around, or just statistical data. So it'd be a great place even for people doing surveys and A/B testing with products and services and open source tools. So it may be an actual interesting play to tie into the structured formats for that in clouds, because there's ways you can add that metadata in the actual source of the page or the JavaScript. So that may be a place to look at. I'd like to talk more offline with you about.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Frederick Hirsch.
I had 2 questions. One is, I don't know if you have a link to the EPUBs and the material, but I don't remember seeing it in the paper. So maybe you have those links. And the other question was, in your slide, I think you mentioned that EPUBs for a long-term stable thing. I'm not quite sure how long-term it is, and I'm wondering I don't understand the ADP projects, but I don't know how long-term you're thinking.
Okay, sure. The first question was asking where some of the resources were that I had in one of the slides. EPUB resources, and we're going to share those slides later. I've already emailed them to you, so you can get that. And you're actually asking about the sustainability of the EPUB and
Persistence policy is the question.
Tyde could probably answer that if you don't.
Okay, sure.
Sustainability actually comes in relation to what we were doing before, where we didn't have a content model. And one of the groups involved in this was the aviation industry, where they create training that needs to last on the order of 30 years, and there really was no way to support that if you had content in lots of different formats that were changing. So the thought is here is if you have a common denominator, which is HTML5 underpinning this, there will be change, but at least it will be a consistent content model and it will change slowly. So